Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. Human beings are creatures of beliefs. We may not think of ourselves in that way, but that is what we are nevertheless. We may imagine ourselves to be creatures of intelligence, or of emotions, or of habit, or of passions, or of any of dozens of other things that we tend to do. While every one of those things does make up some of what we are, believing that this is what we are is just that. A belief. And more than anything else, what sets us apart as human beings is the simple fact that we believe. We believe in all kinds of things. We may not even consider our beliefs to be beliefs, but that does not change them from being what they are, beliefs. Our beliefs may be based on absolutely solid evidence and backing, but they are still beliefs. Our beliefs may hang from the slimmest of threads, but they are beliefs nevertheless. Whether we like it or not, the unique way that we all see everything about the world and our place within it is our own palace of beliefs. We construct this palace every single day of our lives. We may take pieces of it apart every once in a while. We may destroy the entire thing and start over from scratch after some traumatic event or some life-changing moment. But that palace, regardless of whether others are aware of it or not, is our fortress of beliefs. A belief is any idea about reality that we conceive or perceive and take to be real in some way. They are, in a sense, our version of reality. Each of us has a unique set of beliefs, though many of those beliefs overlap significantly. For instance, the belief in the reality of numbers is fairly universal. It is difficult to imagine numbers not being real, but they are a belief nevertheless. So is the idea of a nation, or the sense that things will go well, or the meaning of words in a language. Even our own names are, in this sense, nothing but very personal beliefs. Beliefs are amazing things. For more than anything else, they define who we are. Probably the most famous belief, and the one that most people readily acknowledge to be a belief, is the belief in God. This one has been around far longer than recorded human history. It probably goes back to the end of the last ice age, or perhaps even before. It is simply the sense that there has to be something else to the world other than the world itself. That something else likely made the world and perhaps controls it to a great degree. It almost goes without saying that it must be supernatural, for it also had to create and control what we call nature. At some time in the past, it was natural to believe that there were many gods. There were just too many unknowns and too many different things to account for to shove it all into one package. Then at some later point, people managed to pull off that miracle of belief and understand that there was only one such deity, whom we traditionally call God. The Bible was very possibly the first known human work to profess the belief in one deity, though this is hotly debated. What is clear is that it does indeed profess this belief, even though many have claimed that there are multiple deities in the Bible. But according to Jewish and all monotheistic tradition, nothing could be further from the truth. The one God of the Bible has an identifying name and several more ancient names or descriptions. That specific name seems to mean something on the order of existence, and it is found all over the Bible. For some time, Jews have referred to this name by the word Hashem, which means the name. It is the name used in the singular statement of biblical monotheism, known as the Shema. Quote, "Hear Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one." It is found in what is traditionally listed as the first of the 10 Commandments. Quote, "I am Hashem your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt from the institution of slavery." That statement has an extremely prominent place in this week's Parsha. The Parsha is called Yitro, which is the name of Moshe's father-in-law, who makes a brief appearance at the beginning of the Parsha. But there is no question that the Parsha is really about one subject, and that everything else is merely a prelude to that. That subject is the giving of the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai. There is a long buildup to the momentous event. It involves all kinds of preparations, making sure everyone wouldn't cross boundaries that would be too dangerous for them, and a considerable amount of times that Moshe goes up and down the mountain to issue instructions to the people and to keep God informed about what was happening on the ground. After a few days of this, the great event was ready to happen. After all the advanced preparations, the actual divine utterances that make up the Ten Commandments seem to come a little bit suddenly, like they were just blurted out unexpectedly. It is unclear in what manner exactly the utterances were uttered. Was it a voice like we are familiar with? Or was it some sort of thought process that was made to seem like a voice? Was it real or was it imaginary? We really don't know, but we could all believe what we wish. The Torah makes it seem that all the commandments were heard by everyone present. Jewish tradition, however, has it that only the first two were actually heard communally, while the rest were spoken to Moshe, who then repeated them to everyone else. It happens that only in those first two does God speak in the first person. The others, starting with the third, all speak in the third person or are vague on this point. Those first two are unique in this regard and are consequently held in particularly high esteem in Jewish tradition. The first is the one we quoted earlier. It is not really a commandment as much as a statement of fact or belief. It simply states that the voice speaking is that of Hashem, who is God, who took you, the Israelites, out of slavery in Egypt. It is classically understood as commanding that the Israelites believe precisely this, and by extension, that Hashem is the real God. In this sense, it is truly a commandment, though it is not easy to see this in the words. The second commandment is the flip side of the first. It is the commandment to not believe in any other gods. There are technically about 5 commandments within this long utterance, but nobody calls the list the 15 commandments because of this. It is one general statement condemning the belief in any gods other than Hashem. It couldn't be simpler, but there are quite a bit of details, such as which images of other deities are prohibited and where to draw the line on things that smack of polytheism. The key statement in that second commandment is, quote, "You shall not have any other gods in my presence." This is understood as a universal commandment that has no limitations of situation or time or places or any of that. God's presence is everywhere and at all times, so there are no breaks from this commandment. It is a matter of belief, but it manifests in the form of not having idols and images and so on. It happens that this commandment is repeated in one form or another dozens of times in the Torah. It is by far and away the most common prohibition in the Torah. It was a huge issue back then and the major arena of transition between polytheism and monotheism. In a sense, it was everything. It is interesting that this perpetual commandment seems to have almost no relevance today. While anybody familiar with the Bible has heard something about the prohibition on idol worship, virtually nobody has the vaguest idea why it still should be such a big deal. Of course, it was one of the cardinal sins in biblical times, but that was because in that ancient and long forgotten era, this matter was of paramount importance. This was the cutting edge between the true belief and any false belief. It ranked up there with murder and adultery and incense as far as grave transgressions were concerned. It was unforgivable even under the greatest situations of duress. It was even identified as the divinely ordained reason for the Israelites going into exile away from the promised land. If they abandoned God, God would abandon them. But somehow over the centuries, it seems to have lost all of its relevance. It's just no longer the hot button issue that it was in biblical times. It's a good bet that if there was a 10 commandments in the 21st century, it would not include the prohibition against idolatry. It might not even have anything to say about God at all. In fact, it is difficult to imagine there being a 10 commandments today. There just isn't much we really hold sacred any longer. It's all a bunch of opinions and fads and bucket lists with a few slogans and pet projects to fill in the time. We still believe in all kinds of things, but our beliefs have become much more trivial than the biblical variety. Nothing really matters all that much anymore. This perhaps is the modern form of idolatry. It is no longer concerned with making little statues of imaginary gods or with worshiping trees or mountains or heavenly bodies. It is not even about some weird form of spirit worship or any of that, but it does have something in common with the old biblical idolatry. Just as back then idol worship was the antithesis of belief in the one God, so today the modern form is the antithesis of belief that there is some true and eternal meaning and purpose to life. Modern day idolatry is still the belief in something else besides God. If God can be said to represent all that is holy and good and meaningful in life, idolatry is to believe that there is nothing of the sort. It is the belief that nothing really matters because it is all one grand accident. It is no longer the case that idolatry means believing in a multitude of gods, one for every nuance of the world. That belief largely went out of fashion sometime in the past. The current manifestation is the belief that there is nothing to the world other than the world itself, and that the world itself has no cause or purpose. It just is. While this may seem like a common or reasonable belief today, so was the polytheistic idolatry back in biblical times. It was what made sense at the time, and it was what the Bible was taking the radical step of challenging. It's the same thing today. It may make sense that there is no purpose and ultimate meaning to anything, but there is still a belief that challenges that attitude. It is the belief that there is ultimate meaning and purpose, because that ultimate meaning and purpose is identical with what we can call God. If there ever was anything truly important to believe in, it is this. It is difficult to imagine anything more important and more vital than the belief that there is ultimate meaning in life. Shabbat Shalom.